Welcome to AutoComplete, Roadshow's weekly look back at all the biggest news in the automotive world. My name is Tim Stevens. I'm editor-in-chief of Roadshow, and I'm joined this week by Antoine Goodwin. Antoine, how the heck are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I've been in the South all week, so if I sound a little Southern, that's why.
All right, well, I'll turn up my Vermonter accent. We'll have some nice things to complement each other. We got a lot of news to go through this week. It's been a really busy week, and we got a lot of stories just out of Tesla alone. So I think we might as well start there and get that out of the way. Tesla had their earnings call just yesterday, the day before we're recording this, and the biggest news out of that was that Tesla, or Musk in particular, said that the initial production date for the Model 3, which had been July of next year, is impossible. He just doesn't think that they can possibly meet that. But he did have some pretty audacious demands. He says that they're hoping to build 500,000 cars per year starting in 2018. By way of comparison, they built 50,000 cars last year. So that's a tenfold increase in just over 3 years. Antoine, they've got a really huge factory, the former Numi factory there, which can probably churn out that many cars. But that sounds a little bit optimistic to me that they can ramp up that quickly.
Well, part of the reason he says that meeting the deadline is quote impossible is because they're simplifying the Model 3. So its construction is going to be a little bit simpler. It should fly off the line a little bit faster than the Model S and Model X. But part of that is likely that they have to do a lot of retooling. Because the Model S and Model X are very similar. Building those two cars, there's a lot of shared. But if they're going to be making it a lot simpler, there's probably a good chance that a lot of that time leading up to it is just going to be getting tooled up and figuring out how to build the thing.
And of course, they've got to get the Gigafactory up and running as well. That's already well underway. They did give us some pictures of that not too long ago, which, when completed, will be I believe it's going to be the biggest single building in the world in terms of square footage, which is pretty impressive. But that'll be producing more batteries than any other factory in the world when it's up to speed. So there's a lot of moving pieces that need to come together before Tesla can produce this many cars, but they've obviously got a lot of cars to build. There's somewhere in the order of 400,000 pre-orders for the Model 3. Both my wife and my in-laws also pre-ordered a Model 3, so there are potentially going to be two Model 3s in my family. Antoine, anybody that you know pre-order one?
Nobody that I know, no one's talked to me about it, but I'm pretty sure that a couple of friends have some pre-orders secreted away.
Keeping it on the deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely going to be exciting to watch as we go forward. In fact, if all goes well, we'll be actually taking a look inside the Tesla factory in the near future. So stay tuned for that. We'll give you more details when we have some things lined up there. But let's move on to the next Tesla story, which is also on the Model 3. Elon Musk confirmed that it will have a ludicrous mode. He was asked on Twitter this week, and his response was, of course, the Model 3 will have ludicrous mode. On the Model S and the Model X, Ludicrous Mode basically makes some changes to the electronic circuitry in the car, allows it to suck more power out of the batteries more quickly, and it'll take the cars to 60 in about a half a second quicker on both cars. But it's a $10,000 option on those cars. And Antoine, I think that might be a little bit too much for the Model 3. Do you think they'll discount that a little bit on the cheaper car?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it depends on how much those components cost, really. And it really just sort of depends on, I don't know, I think a part of it is that things like Ludicrous Mode can't really be great for the battery. And so maybe if you put it behind a paywall that's high enough, maybe everyone won't get it. So then 5, 10 years down the line, you won't have a whole bunch of Model 3 drivers complaining about the battery life on their car is less. So you give that option to people who probably have enough money to buy it and then will probably be moved on to another car in 5 years. Whereas those people who plan on keeping their Model 3 for the long haul maybe, can treat their battery with a little more respect.
That's a really good point. And also, Tesla is basically dealing with a lot of maintenance and warranty related issues. So they'll certainly want to try to keep those to a minimum as they can. Definitely putting a high price on something like this that may be a little bit more damaging to components would be a pretty good way to hopefully keep the warranty claims down. But one of the many questions about the Model 3 as we go forward. But again, it's a $10,000 option on the S and the X. Hopefully it'll be a little cheaper on the Model 3. We'll see. We also got new details this week on the Model S. It's got a little bit of an upgrade. It's now available with a 75 kilowatt hour battery pack over the base 70 that was on there before. This will give you up to about 250 miles of estimated range. That's up from about 230 on the 70 kilowatt hour. But the really interesting thing is that all Model S's that have the 70 are actually offering or shipping, I should say, with 75 kilowatt hour packs. And it's a software unlock to go from 70 to 75. Antoine, is that a little bit disingenuous, or is it just, kind of keen cost savings?
That definitely seems a little more disingenuous. I mean, again, battery packs, they never really fully discharge or or fully charge up, just so that you can maintain a part of the life. So you're never really getting the full 100% of the battery's charge capacity.
Hmm.
But to not give, it seems a little bit disingenuous to not really let people know that they've had more battery than it just seems a little weird. And also to
It
put
is
that
weird.
behind a $3,000 paywall is a lot weird.
It's definitely strange. I can see both sides of the equation because Tesla's already doing this with autopilot. Pretty much every Model S and X they sell these days has the ability to run autopilot, has all
Mm.
the sensors that it needs to be able to do that. But that's a $3,000 unlock, and basically they're flipping a switch in software to turn that on. So, that's not the end of the world. I can kind of see that, and I can see how it would be some cost savings and production simplicity for Tesla to basically put 75 kilowatt hours on at a minimum in every car. But it is interesting to me, though, and I'm waiting to see what the backlash is like, that people are driving around with 75 kilowatt hours in their car, but they're not able to tap into it.
It's like the double-edged sword of the sort of everything about a Tesla is software upgradable. It seems like,
Mhm.
whereas you start getting into a world where your car has microtransactions. It seems a little weird.
That does seem a little weird, especially you can imagine a situation where you are sitting on the side of the road and you're out of charge, but it pops up a little dial and says, "Hey, you've actually got another 5 kilowatt hours sitting in there. Pay me $3,000, and you'll get to the concert on time." We'll see. Hopefully, they don't get to quite that degree. Final Tesla story this week: Tesla posted a demonstration of their touted bioweapon defense mode. If you're unfamiliar with this, it's basically a set of filters that are available in the Model S and the Model X. They demonstrated that by putting it inside of a bubble, putting a car inside of a bubble, and filling it with 2.5 micrometer particles of something, they didn't say what. And within a few minutes, less than 2 minutes, as a matter of fact, the car had filtered all of them out of the interior of the cabin, and it was clean after that. In fact, after that, it began to clean out the rest of the bubble itself. I don't know how good of a test this is, Antoine. It's a little hard to visualize a 2.5 micrometer particle.
Yeah, we don't really know what sort of particle it is, but I think the interesting thing here is that calling it bioweapon mode
Hmm.
is definitely sort of marketing. But the thing that's interesting, sort of pointing out, is that in areas where there's a lot of pollution in the air, this is sort of if we can clean this amount of air,
Hmm.
then you're not going to have any problem driving around. In markets like China, where the air is sort of known for being more polluted, or in situations like that. So it's sort of a look. We can do all of it's like how in pickup trucks commercials they show, like, towing the space shuttle. So yeah,
Hmm.
definitely it can tow your boat. This is the same thing for sort of pollution in markets where pollution is an issue.
Yeah, particularly if we're talking about something like diesel particulates, which are actually a little bit smaller than this, but presumably it would work for there as well. And total transparency, we were actually thinking of trying to do this test as well, but we couldn't find a way to test this in a visual way, or indeed an intern willing to get in a bubble full of biohazard material. So Tesla got ahead of us here. But anyway, if you are interested in bioweapons, or if you're interested in getting the best quality air in your car, this should be maybe that's a good defense for you. This is another rather pricey option that Tesla offers on the S and the X, and presumably it'll be there on the 3 as well. All right, Antoine, what do you think? Is that enough Tesla news for the week?
It's enough Tesla news for.
All right, let's move on to some more interesting news. This is one of the bigger stories of the week. Google and Chrysler, of all companies, partnering this week. Google announced that Fiat Chrysler and they have come to an agreement that Google will be purchasing 100 of the upcoming Pacifica hybrid minivans, and some of them will be going to California, and some will be tested in Detroit. But Google is going to be outfitting these with their autonomous gear that they're running right now on Lexus SUVs, putting it on the Pacifica minivan and testing them in California and again, and also in the Detroit area. Basically, learning more in a more real world car, in a more modern car. It's also a very good marketing opportunity for Chrysler, I think. Antoine, what do you think Chrysler has to learn, and what do you think Google has to gain from this partnership?
Well, I mean, Chrysler has a lot to sort of learn in that it basically means that it sort of frees them up to sort of let someone who's an expert in the field be an expert in the field. It's like going to a part supplier for anything. It's establishing that relationship with Google means that advances that Google makes in autonomous driving, Chrysler benefits from them. On
Hmm.
Google's side, I think what's interesting in choosing a minivan is that it sort of speaks to the idea that self-driving technology is getting to a point where it's something that you can think about eventually trusting putting your kids in. Like a tiny little Google bubble car, a luxury SUV, a sports sedan. Those are things for like
Hmm.
rich techies and stuff. But a minivan is a family vehicle, so people are really careful about what they put their families in. So you see a self-driving minivan putting 1 million miles on the road. A couple of years from now, you think, well, yeah, I'll definitely, I'll think about putting my kids in here, and that's a big step as far as a psychological leap for people accepting the technology.
It definitely is, and it's definitely encouraging. I think we were all pretty big fans of the Pacifica. I think we were all ready to be underwhelmed, but we've all been surprised by how good it looks and presumably how good it's going to be when it does hit the road. That they're using the hybrid version is great, so they'll be able to do some plug-in action on that as well. And since it's got, all the electronic power steering and all the assist systems, they shouldn't really have to do a whole lot to fiddle with the car to make it self-driving, other than, of course, strapping a lot of sensors on the roof and doing lots of other software tweaks. But I'm definitely curious to see where this goes. And I think it also speaks to the difference in approach as we look at what Google's trying to do on the automotive front and what Apple may or may not be trying to do on the automotive front. Google being very upfront and working on partnerships with existing players, and trying to basically avoid all the headaches of trying to learn how to build a car. Or if the rumors are correct, Apple trying to do everything their own way and kind of make their own mistakes. So, we'll see how things shake out. But it's definitely an interesting story. And again, I think a bit of good PR for both companies in this case. Some other news from the Fiat Chrysler world. We got pricing this week on the 124 Spider. This is basically a car that's built on top of the MX-5, the Miata platform, but giving some more Italian style and flair to the thing. The base Fiat will be priced at $24,995. That's about $1,000 more than the base Miata. But if you go with the Abarth edition, which has 160 horsepower, you're going to be spending $28,195, which is $500 cheaper than the MX-5 Club model, and it has 5 more horsepower. Mm-hmm. Which would you go for, Antoine?
This is going to seem a little blasphemous, but I kind of like the looks of the Fiat anyway, more than the MX-5. So, I mean, 5 free horsepower for less money. I'd lean towards that. I really like the Miata, but the things that I like the most about the Miata are the driving dynamics. If this engine is as good as I think it's going to be, and the driving dynamics are the same, it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah,
I like the look of best.
I totally agree. I am I'm still a little bit unsold on the looks of the Fiat, but I think I do like it. I'm definitely curious about the driving dynamic. I'm wondering what they've done to tweak the suspension, if anything, over the base Miata. There's some thought that maybe it's going to be a little bit softer, a little bit different to drive. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think I would probably with you, Antoine. I think I'd probably go with the Fiat myself, if only to be a little bit more different. Do you think they'll do the whole power hard top retracting thing, or is it already niche enough with the Fiat?
I don't know. The one that I saw in Geneva had a fixed hard top on it, the Rally Edition. So I mean, that is kind of what I would go for. If I'm going to go hard top, I'm just going to bolt it on and call it a day.
Also had the big lights in the front too, which I would also go for if those were offered as an option.
Definitely.
I don't think those will be offered, though, by Fiat, but that'd be pretty cool if they did. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, but before we do, I want to give you a quick rundown of some of the news and some of the great features we have on Roadshow this week at theroadshow.com, of course. First up is my drive of the Aston Martin DB11. Aston Martin was brave enough to take a prototype version of that car and not only take us out to get a ride in it, but also to give me the keys and let me drive the thing on a Bridgestone test track in Italy. So very early first drive of the Aston Martin DB11, not going into production until toward the end of this year. But you can check that out on theroadshow.com. We also have a review of the latest Toyota Camry. I know, perhaps not as exciting as an Aston Martin DB11. But it is one of the best-selling cars in the world for a very good reason. And Andrew Kroc, check that out. We've also got an amazing comparison of every generation of the Volkswagen GTI by the folks at Carfection. It's an amazing video. They got them all together at one time, which was quite a logistical feat, and it's worth checking out. Antoine, not to put you on the spot, but which generation GTI would you go for?
First gen.
First gen? I'm between first and second gen. I'm not sure which I'd go for. One of those two, but yeah, for sure. Earlier the better, I think, by and large. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more AutoComplete on Roadshow. Welcome back to AutoComplete, your weekly rundown of all the biggest automotive news on Roadshow. I'm Tim Stevens, editor-in-chief of Roadshow, joined this week by Antoine Goodwin. Antoine, are you ready to talk about some recalls?
This is my favorite part of the show, actually.
It's so exciting. I know. I'm so excited myself. I even hate to mention the word Takata, but ultimately we did get some more updates on the Takata side of things. Between 35 and 40 million new airbags are going to be recalled. There was speculation a couple of weeks ago that this would come to pass, and it has indeed come to pass. Three new manufacturers have been pulled into the loop this time. They are Tesla, the company formerly known as Fisker, and Jaguar Land Rover, also now being included in this new expanded recall. As ever, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and at this point, it's kind of hard to imagine which cars are not going to be included. Antoine, do you think this can get even bigger, or have we reached peak Takata yet?
I have a bad feeling it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're one of the largest tier one providers, and then something goes wrong in your production. It just affects everybody, and the sort of I think we'll be feeling the ripples for this for a long time, especially Takata themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And at this point, the onus is on them to prove that a given product is not defective, and that is a very difficult thing to prove. If you have a fault, that's one thing, but if you're trying to prove that your entire product line isn't defective, that's a very difficult thing. And if we indeed wind up recalling every Takata airbag, yeah, this is going to be incredibly huge. So we'll keep tracking it, of course, and give you the latest on that front. We've also got a couple more recalls to go through. GM is recalling 4,800 trucks and SUVs for a suspension defect. They are the Escalade, Tahoe, Suburban, Sierra, and Yukon, of course, all very closely related products. If you have one of those, you should definitely check it out or look for a recall. And Nissan is recalling 3.5 million U.S. cars manufactured between 2013 and 27 for an airbag defect. Covers a lot of their models, almost all their models actually in those times. So check out theroadshow.com for the full list and see if your car is affected. Hopefully not, but if so, maybe get a new steering wheel out of the deal. Okay, that's all the recalls. And did I miss any, Antoine, or did we cover them all this week?
I believe that's all of them that we've seen.
I think that's it. All right, let's move on to something a little bit more fun to talk about, which is the new Corvette Grand Sport. This is, if you're not familiar, basically a car that's going to slot in between the Stingray and the supercharged Z06, and we got pricing this week, and appropriately, it fits right in between the Stingray and the Z06. It'll start at $66,450. That's $14,000 less than a Z06, and $11,000 more than a Stingray. You basically get all the suspension tweaks and all the look of a Z06, but without that pesky supercharger. All right, Antoine, I got to ask, which would you go for, a Z06 or the Grand Sport?
Are we talking? Am I using my money or someone else's money?
Let's say you're
someone
using
else's
your money.
It's the 06. But
If it's your money?
with my money, the basic Corvette Stingray has a healthy amount of horsepower, and I'm a handling and precision kind of guy. So the Grand Sport definitely has its appeals to me. Keeping $14,000 in my pocket for tires and track days definitely appeals to me.
Yeah, you'll need a lot of those tires, I think, for sure. I'm with you. I'd definitely go with the Grand Sport as well, if only because, well, yeah, handling's more important. And I do think that there have been some issues with those superchargers. I think by and large, Chevy's got them bolted down at this point. But even so, I don't think that you really need that extra horsepower unless you live right next to Road America, maybe, and you can stretch the car's legs on the long straights. But yeah, I'd go Grand Sport myself. Say 14 grand. That'll get you a couple of track days out of it. We got a JD Power study this week that said that older drivers don't want autonomous cars. Baby boomers, just 23% of them would like to have autonomous functionality in their cars. And those older than baby boomers, the pre-baby boomer generation, easy for me to say, only 18% of them would like autonomy. That's up to, compares to about 50% of Gen Xers and Gen Yers who do want autonomy. And this is a little bit surprising to me because in a lot of ways, this generation has the most to gain from autonomous functionality. As you get older, a lot of people have to lose their licenses. They can't get around on their own anymore.
Well,
Whereas
that's
an
what
autonomous car to
Toyota
drive them
speaks
around.
a lot to. Right now, with Toyota's whole autonomous push is our drivers are getting older, and we want to make sure we can continue to serve them well beyond the days that they can continue to drive. And so, yeah, it seems interesting that we may come to a day where they feel like it's being forced on them, just because it's a lot of technology to learn. I think with younger people, you sort of come into a situation where you take a lot of the technology underneath the technology that you use for granted. So there's only so much that you have to hold on to in your brain. A smartphone comes out with a better camera. You're not thinking about how does the smartphone work. You're just thinking, oh, the camera's better, so this is what I need to hang on to. But with older and older generations, they have to keep more of that information in their head as far as, well, I just figured this part out, and now I've got to figure this part out.
Yeah, and that definitely makes a lot of sense. And of course, there is ultimately trusting in technology, which is something that a younger consumer would be more likely to do, whereas somebody who's maybe a little bit older might be a little bit less trusting. But ultimately, I think this definitely points to the marketing part of the equation, which is something that people are definitely going to have to do, particularly companies like Google. As they launched their wearable device, Google Glass, there was really no marketing at all around that. And so ultimately, the story got out of hand. and that pretty much tanked that product before it even had a chance to release. So I hope that we see some attempts at positive marketing for autonomy here before those products start to hit market. Otherwise, we could find ourselves where the story gets out of hand, especially if we have the unfortunate incident where there's an autonomous car that crashes and causes an injury or worse. But I think we'll have to wait and see. But definitely, it was interesting to see the decline in acceptance on autonomous cars. I, for one, am pretty excited about them. Antoine, do you trust them? Will you trust them?
I trust them so far. Yeah, I mean, I
So
trust that
far.
the technology will get to where it needs to be. That's
Yeah.
where I am.
Yeah, me too. I definitely think we'll get there. We're not there yet, obviously. In fact, spending quite a bit of time inside of a Model X lately, I can say that it's amazing how far along we absolutely are, but there are a lot of shortcomings there for sure. So we got some ways to go, but yeah, I'm bullish on autonomy myself. And final story this week, McLaren taking something out of the vault, something amazing, something that made me want to sell all my possessions and get a second mortgage on my house. They're selling McLaren F1 car number 69 with just 2,800 miles on the clock. There was no pricing offered, but the car is expected to go somewhere in excess of $10 million. This is basically a minty fresh version of one of the greatest supercars of all time. It even includes the titanium toolkit that came along with it, plus everything else in one of the most amazing cars of all time. Unfortunately, I can't possibly scrap together $10 million. I don't know about you, Antoine, but
I know a
I'm
guy.
unfortunately not that lucky. You know a guy? You should call that guy and you should ask for some favors. Yeah, man, that's one of my favorite cars of all time. I don't know about yours, but it's cool to see that they're still around and available in almost new condition.
Yeah, and it's one of the most unique supercars of all time. So it'll be interesting to see where this ends up.
Yeah, we'll be watching the pricing for sure. It'll be well out of the reach. Even if I think we all pooled our money together, I think unfortunately it wouldn't quite fit. But a great car, and hopefully someday McLaren will make a new hypercar with central seating like that, and maybe then we can afford something. All right, that's it from me this week. Antoine, anything else you want to add before we call this autocomplete to close?
I do not. It's been pretty comprehensive.
I think it's been great to have you, Antoine. Thanks for your perspective, and thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be back next week with another rundown of the weekend news on autocomplete. Tim Stevens signing off, and we'll see you next week.